Excuse me. Thank you, Bob and Cassie, for organizing this and opportunity to be part of it. And I always learn a little bit more every time I hear Stacy talking about the complex task of tracking emissions and fluxes of greenhouse gases in Maine. My charge this afternoon is to talk about the governor's Forest Carbon Program Task Force, which flows from the Maine Climate Action Plan that Cassie described. Maine won't wait. And so I'll do that, give you a little bit of context of how we got there. My slides will move. There we go. So this is basically linking back to what you just heard from Stacy about a carbon cycle calculation or analysis on a particular entity. This is the front page of the U.S. Global Change Research Program, a national organization that does these carbon cycle reports. Different chapters cover different areas or regions. There's one chapter that is the North American carbon cycle, and one of our colleagues at the university, Dan Hayes, was the lead author of that chapter. And so we had some good insight on some of the approaches and even some of the slides and templates to use in putting together this initial carbon budget. And as Stacy alluded to, that's exactly what we did a year and a half ago now. A small group of us at the University of Maine, and a colleague from the Maine Forest Service, and a colleague that you're going to hear from in a minute, Bev Johnson, were all part of this initial estimate. It was an unfunded effort, took a few months of time to give a first estimate of what the comprehensive carbon cycle is. Has a lot of moving parts. We're certainly not going to go through it here today, and it covers forests and agriculture, and you're going to hear about blue carbon and wetlands. There's a lot of things we know. There's a lot of things we don't have adequate data for, and so we did our best to estimate what these components would be. This is exactly what the budgets in that national report look like, but what you're looking at here are our Maine numbers. And because Maine is 89% forested, the forests sort of do a lot of heavy lifting relative to carbon flux in the state. And in the period that we've been in, carbon accumulation, since we're accumulating and we're growing more forests faster than we are harvesting them. And so I'm going to jump forward to sort of zoom in on that. And the analysis of the overall carbon budget relative to carbon offsets, comparing it to the budget you just heard Casey talk about, Stacy, I'm sorry, in relative to CO2 equivalents, demonstrated that our forests are growing and offsetting roughly 60%. This is not a legal offset. This is a spreadsheet offset of the amount of greenhouse gases that we are emitting. And so the forests are growing faster than they're being harvested. And so we're accumulating carbon on the landscape that is removing that carbon from the atmosphere, and therefore, quote unquote, offsetting the emissions. If we included some of the durable products, so things like wood and paper are pretty quickly back into the atmosphere because they don't have a long life. But construction lumber or cross-laminated timber and things like that, and some of the new products that are coming online, add an additional somewhat long-term storage of carbon. And so that gave us another 15%, with the bottom line of this estimate being that about 3/4 of the current greenhouse gas emissions are being offset at this point in time by our forests. And that doesn't stay the same over the decades, but it represents the period of time that we're in right now. And so with that background, you've already heard about the fantastic plan that Maine now has, an integrated, Maine's first integrated by way of adaptation and mitigation climate action plan, thanks to the LD 1679 that Governor Mills signed into law in 2019, as Cassie described, that has a whole host of initiatives You heard about the 8 strategies, and we already looked at pretty much this slide. The strategy E is about protecting Maine's environment and working lands and waters, promote natural climate solutions, and increase carbon sequestration. And some of the key elements of that are increasing conservation lands. Number 2 here is to develop new incentives to increase carbon storage. And then other items that Cassie already talked about as far as technical assistance and monitoring. In order to, if you dig deep into the document itself and you go into strategy E on, I think, page 14, this is page 14 over here, one of the items explicitly calls for establishing in 2021 a stakeholder process to develop a voluntary incentive-based forest carbon program, practice or inventory-based, for woodland owners of 10 to 10,000 acres and the forest practitioners that manage those lands. The focus was on the quote unquote smaller, obviously some of these are relatively large land holdings, because the challenge of utilizing some of the existing carbon offset programs can be relatively burdensome relative to the commitment and the costs of implementation. And so it was thought that large landowners already have access to those kinds of programs, which are much more difficult for the smaller landowners in Maine. And so in order to address that component, which is about 1/3 of our forest lands in Maine, Governor Mills signed earlier this winter on January 13th, the executive order to establish the governor's task force on the creation of a forest carbon program. And the charge for the task force on Maine's forest carbon program is essentially a list of items that I'm going to very quickly walk through. And I've used the magic of bold text to hopefully make our short description of this a little easier to follow. Review available data for practice-based carbon programs throughout the United States. So let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's learn about what's already out there that we then can consider for every state's different and the needs are different. But we want to build on the good work that's already done. Review current harvest levels and carbon stocking to have a better understanding of, as I said, we're already 89% forested, and we have a lot of carbon out on that landscape. What's the status of that carbon, and where are the best opportunities to incentivize additional sequestration? Identify climate-friendly forest management practices. And so what are practices that will help maintain the flow and supply of raw materials for the forest products industry, which is essential to our economy, and yet at the same time enhance carbon sequestration and resilience in our forests. Look at financial incentives and technical assistance that will do exactly that, incentivize these landowners and managers to consider the kinds of options that are available to increase carbon sequestration. Identify incentives for performance standards in order to assure that the practices are maintained at the highest quality level in a sustainable fashion. Recommend updates to the open space current use taxation program in Maine as one of several programs that can be that do and can potentially enhance further the sequestration and the enhancement of carbon stored on the landscape. And then explore partnerships with commercial landowners, as well as looking at partnerships with other states and multi-state forest carbon initiatives. And then finally, come up with a recommendation for specific goals or targets for the program to achieve on a certain timeline. The Forest Carbon Program Task Force membership is what we're looking at on this slide. The co-chairs are Tom Abella, who's a senior advisor in the governor's office, who's co-chair with Commissioner Amanda Beal of the Department of Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry, and then a number of other people who are representing a cross-section of stakeholders in Maine, from the university and private sector, a farm, and the Forest Society of Maine. And then finally, examples of different kinds of practices, from afforestation to extended rotations, conservation, which we've already talked about, managed plantations, and adaptive silviculture. And so, as Cassie indicated, all the activities of the council and of this task force are available on the GOPIF's website, and as well meeting materials and timelines. And so with that, I will finish and say thank you. I think I forgot to say that the recommendations were due in September of this year. So we will be working hard and soon learn about the outcomes of this effort.